Hello everybody, it's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we're talking about a story that isn't a story that became a story, so why the hell not? I should cover it. This is news I saw this morning. I kind of looked at it and went, nah, this isn't really news. And then I saw the reaction to it. A whole bunch of people are kind of reacting to this story like it is a big piece of news. And at that point I thought, okay, maybe I should cover this one. And what it boils down to basically is Unity Technologies Inc. are looking at going public. At least that is what the rumors say. They're going to have an IPO. In investor lingo, that stands for initial public offering, and that is pretty much the process by which a private company becomes a public company. Simple terms is you go from being privately owned by a handful of people and investors to having your shares traded on a public trade, and then you're now beholden to shareholders for direction in your company. Although again, there's a whole lot of non-story here because Unity is already beholden to shareholders, as we will see in a second. So, without further ado, let us jump in. The story started from Cheddar. By the way, this is completely unsubstantiated. It's just sources and rumors. Nobody directly said. And all they're really saying is they're targeting an early 2020 IPO. So they're going to try and go public. Now, why I think this story is actually kind of hilarious is this is the same site from Cheddar. Look down here, you'll see John, is it Riccitello? Basically, everyone's favorite CEO, formerly the CEO of Electronic Arts, has been the CEO of Unity since I think 2017. And frankly, the writing was on the wall then. And in this interview here in 2018, they gave this little blurb. Okay, so this is all you need to hear.
What's the path for the company? I mean, it seems like the company goes public at some point, right?
I mean, that's the general path.
There you go. So basically, a year ago, he said, yeah, we'll go public. And frankly, that's the way it works. When you have a company that people are making investments in, those people want to get paid for their investment. So you have big companies like Silver Lake. They give a company $300 million. There's a reason why they're doing that. Is because they're hoping that eventually that company is either A, sold to someone else for many billion dollars and then they get their percentage back, or goes public, in which case they say may own 15 or 20% of the shares that are issued and they make their money back that way. The second you have an external investment, those are one of the two possible outcomes. Well, other than the third possible outcome of death and everybody loses all their money. So this is not shocking. This is the way it was going to happen all along, and then ultimately it still doesn't matter one lick. Why is that? Well, at least back in, again, this one is an article from 2017, again from Riccitello, and he's basically saying, for the investor, is there a timetable now? Are they now the majority of the ownership? That's being venture capitalists, external investors. No, they are not a majority yet. The majority of the company is still owned by the founders and the employees. I've told them that we are not doing an IPO before 2019. I don't know if we are going to do one in 2019. So basically, they are doing an IPO. And you even see it right here. The long-term outcome is likely an IPO. But they had enough money, they could do things privately, they could continue to grow, and they're going to do that because if you get bigger and bigger and bigger before your IPO, you get more money when you do an IPO. So again, this was never a matter of if, this was a matter of when. And one of the problems might have also boiled down to, at a $3 billion valuation for Unity, they kind of became less of a buyout target. There's only a handful of companies that are going to do a $3 billion buyout. Basically, I could see Microsoft potentially, possibly an Electronic Arts or an Activision or one of those types of companies. And yeah, that might be about it. Maybe Apple on some weird, bold move. So there are big enough companies out there that could swallow up a $3 billion company. But for the most part, that's when you start looking at the payoff most likely being in the form of an IPO. So there's nothing really shocking here. And even if there is an IPO, there's already a board of directors. In fact, if we look over here, this is Unity Technologies Crunch-based. This is an investing website. And you can see here the different rounds of capitalization they've gotten. So back in 2009, Sequoia Capital invested $8 million along with 4 other investors. And then they got a $17 million investment in 2011. 2016, they got a 181 million. Then earlier this year, they got that earlier last year, they got that Silver Lake investment, and a couple of ones since. And you see there are a number of different investors involved in all this. And each one of these investments sort of sets the target price of the company. So that's where that $3 billion valuation comes at, is when they sold off this last round of investment. They kind of valued the shares that you would be allocated as being worth about $3 billion. So these people all want to get paid. These guys have been waiting around for like a dozen years now. They're probably itching to get paid. So every one of these guys, they've got a long view. Their initial investment was only $8 million. So you know what? They could afford to lose it and not care too much, whereas their payday is probably going to be as big as Silver Lake's with their $250 million investment, just the way that investing works. The earlier you get in, the more you make, the more you can risk, and so on and so forth. But that is the end game. These people all want their money out. And if you look at, in terms of changing things, let's see if do they actually have the board on here? It doesn't really matter all that much. Generally what you do, if I go up to people, it'll probably have it. So you're going to see the board of directors here. Board. No, they don't have the board here. Oh, investors, probably here. This site sucks. All right, so I'm locked out of it. Anyways, you can get the board of directors, the list of all the people. And what you'll have is all those companies we were just looking at a second ago, Silver Lake and so on and so forth. They all will have somebody on the board of directors for Unity right now. And those people are the ones that are directing how budgets are going to be spent, how we hire people, what markets we're going to expand into, the decisions we see out of Unity. And there's been a couple questionable ones in the last year or two. Well, those are coming from the board. It doesn't change at all. If they go public and then they still maintain to have the majority ownership, literally nothing will change. They will potentially have a whole lot more money. And then there is one potential small side effect of going public, and it actually doesn't tend to be as dire as you'd think it is. But all of a sudden, you generally make a lot of your early employees into millionaires who may not want to stick around that long. Now, a lot of them will probably have kind of contracts that say that they have to sunset their way out once the IPO kicks in, but that is potentially the only real major problem here is some people at Unity are going to get paid big time and have the motivation to work go kind of away. I knew somebody that was employee number, 200-ish at Microsoft. And yeah, their stock kind of retired them pretty young, pretty early. So you might get a bit of that when this goes through. Some of their top level employees might leave as a result, but that's planned for, that's built in, and that's probably the only real big negative I can see here. And the funny thing is, this is a private company with all the risks of a private company, and always has been. So there's nothing to prevent, say that there was a CEO scandal tomorrow, it came into a big investment, Unity got sued, they were out of business tomorrow. Could happen. That's the downside to using closed software from a closed company. Doesn't change anything if they're public. It's the same risk and the same problems. And another thing that you might not realize is their closest competitor, let's call them, Epic Games with the Unreal Engine. Well, they were owned, or not owned, their major investment earlier, I think it was last year, for a couple $100 million was Tencent, the Chinese gaming company. Basically, they own gaming in China, and more often they own gaming in North America as well, it seems. I think they just bought a big chunk of Ubisoft as well. But Tencent owns and therefore has a stake in Epic Games. I don't know how much influence they have, but obviously Tencent is going to want to get something out of that relationship as well. So that is it. Realistically, again, this is a non-story that just became a story. So the IPO, I honestly can't see it changing anything other than making a bunch of people very rich. And probably that's about it. And again, this isn't news, in my opinion, because the writing has been on the wall since 2017. You had the CEO straight out saying, oh yeah, IPO is definitely coming, or most likely coming, or what we're working towards. And this news story is basically just saying the exact same thing. So if it turns out that there is not an IPO in 2020, it's probably because a big company like Microsoft swooped in and bought them. So those are one of the two major outcomes you're going to expect to see. And I don't think you'll be shocked by either. And I think in terms of if you're an existing Unity developer, the thing you want to see happen is an IPO, to be honest, because then it's pretty much the same management, the same group, the same people, and the same direction going forward, where you can have someone come in and completely buy up a company and then mismanage and kill it within a year's time. So if you're a Unity developer, you probably want to see this happen just for the stability that it will provide. So again, it's a story that I'm only covering because I saw the reaction to it. It's kind of a non-story. Anyone that's paying any attention to the investment side of Unity knew that an IPO was coming. Looking at the ownership management of it, the stability of ownership and direction will stay the same after an IPO. So really not much is going to change. And as I just finished mentioning, it actually provides a little bit more stability in the future of the company because you can't have that big external force come in and just buy it out. Although I guess you could with a hostile takeover, which is a different topic for a different day. All right, so that's enough investment talk for the day. That is the rumor about Unity IPO. It's a non-story. Expect it to happen, and if it doesn't happen next year, it's going to happen the year after, or like I said, they get bought outright. All right, hope you enjoyed that. Talk to you all later. Goodbye.